Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy. Thank you for tuning in today. I have something of a surprise to me video to make. This car, interestingly enough, broke down right here at the shop about a week ago, and I'm going to take a look at it. I suspect it has a broken timing belt, which is why I'm titling this video the way I am, how to find a broken timing belt. So I'll cue you into my diagnostic process, so if you suspect you have a broken timing belt in your vehicle, you may be able to follow these steps and figure it out. Anyway, let's get started. The vehicle in question here is a 1999 Toyota Camry with a 2.2 liter engine in it. However, what I'm going to cover in this video should cover just general broken timing belt diagnosis across the board. Now, the quickest, easiest, dirtiest way I know of doing this is with this overhead cam engine to remove the distributor cap, crank the engine, and look for the distributor rotor to move. Unfortunately, this engine does not have a distributor, so we're going to have to employ different means. But one of the first things I'll do is just the sound of the engine as it cranks is different with a vehicle with an engine with a broken timing belt than it is when it isn't broken. So let's listen to this thing turn over. Now weirdly, it did kind of skip a little bit there for a second, but it was only for a second. But I think you heard what I meant for you to hear, which was, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of resistance as the engine is turning over. If you hear that that beat as the engine turns over, there's a good chance it has compression. So this is going to be my next step. I'm going to remove the spark plug wire on number 1, and I'm going to put a spark tester on it, but I'm also going to at the same time install a compression tester into that same cylinder, and then we'll crank the engine and see if we have compression or spark. Here's my quick setup, and that is that I've installed the compression tester in cylinder number 1. I've taken the spark plug wire that was in cylinder number 1 and hooked a spark tester up to it. I think it's a good idea to do this just so that the spark has some place to go. I'm not saying it's totally bad, but it's not really the best thing to let a coil fire into nothing. But anyway, let me show you one more thing I hooked up. I've attached one more thing, and that is this remote trigger. It's really just a switch that I use for things like this. But all it does is I've got one wire connected to the positive battery cable here, and then I've got another wire down here that goes to the starter solenoid, which there's this single wire going into the starter solenoid. I've replaced it with this little pigtail, and the other end goes to my switch. So that means that whenever I pull this trigger, the engine cranks over. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go inside and turn the ignition on before we go here. So now I'll turn the ignition switch to on, but I'm not going to crank it. I'm just going to leave it like that. The engine would now be what I'll call on and ready, so be mindful. So any cranking of the engine, if it does start for whatever reason, you don't want to be anywhere near any spinny stuff. So just know that once you've got the ignition on like that, the engine is live. Be careful. All right, I have my trigger ready to go. The ignition is on. All I've got to do is activate it and see what we get. Now that's interesting and somewhat unexpected. I did have spark, as you could see, and you might have also been able to hear it. Compression is not good. I mean, we're looking at what looks like maybe 40 PSI, something like that. Next steps would be to go down the line on the engine and do a compression check on the other 3 cylinders and see if they match up to sort of get a better idea of what's going on. Before I do that, though, I'm going to turn the ignition off. All right, turn the ignition back on, and we'll hit our trigger and see what we get in cylinder number 2. Okay, nothing at all in cylinder number 2. And also know that the other plugs are out, so all 4 spark plugs are out, so there will be, well, less resistance as it turns over, but we got 0 zip compression on cylinder number 2. Let's move on to cylinder 3. Now we're on cylinder number 3, and you might be wondering the same thing I'm wondering. Okay, why didn't we have spark on cylinder number 2 as well as no compression? It's definitely interesting. Let's continue on and see what we find. Cylinder 3. Okay, there was a quick spark there for a second, and then nothing, but also no compression on cylinder number 3. There's the smell of raw fuel while I'm doing this, because the injectors are still active. But that leads me to believe that at least for now, before I check fuel pressure, that it's reasonable to assume that I am getting fuel pressure. But I mean, the fact that we have no compression means, okay, so fuel pressure or not, we're still dealing with a mechanical issue with the engine, no matter what. Okay, everything's hooked up. The ignition is back on. I'm gonna pull the trigger, see what we get. Cylinder 4. All right, we had all kinds of spark there, and maybe we had spark on cylinder 2 and I just didn't see it. I'll have to check the video. But we've got spark. We've got what smells like fuel. We've got no compression on 3 out of 4 cylinders. That tells me it's highly likely that that camshaft in here is not spinning. It's probably still getting a crank signal, that's why we see the spark, but I don't think the top end of the engine is moving. We can verify that by removing the upper timing cover and getting a look. I'm now going to remove the upper timing cover to confirm my suspicions that this is a timing belt issue. I'm not going to cover that in detail in this video, but we'll talk about my results when I have them. All right, I've saved the big reveal for you. I removed all the fasteners from the upper timing cover and gotten everything out of the way, so let's have a look. And what do we find? Exactly what I suspected. For whatever reason, that timing belt is no longer connected and no longer turning the engine. So my suspicions were correct, and I've shown you my process and how I go about diagnosing a broken timing belt. Just to illustrate this a little more clearly, I've rigged up my switch again and the ignition is off, and I'm just going to turn the engine over so you can see well, that the timing belt is not moving the camshaft. And there it is, definitive proof. So we've got to get the rest of it apart, find out what's going on, and well, replace broken parts. Hopefully we don't have bent valves, and go from there. Well, I hope this video has provided you with some useful information on diagnosing a broken timing belt on your engine, or if you just are curious about how to diagnose a broken timing belt on an engine. These are my methods. As I stated earlier, the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is to remove the distributor cap and turn the engine over and look for movement. If you don't see any movement, it's reasonable to conclude that you have a problem with the timing belt. However, I would recommend that you remove some timing covers and do a direct inspection of the timing belt just to verify things, as I did in this video. You never know, there always could be something else. I'll put links in the description to parts, tools, other videos, including a video that I did specifically on what to do if your timing belt breaks. That said, if you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com, which will also be linked in the description. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with the world. Appreciate it when you do that stuff. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Stay dirty. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Well, thank you for sticking around to the very end of the video. And yes, this timing belt was very broken, very, very broken. And all I did was replace it and the water pump. Let go. It really liked me. Running pretty good now. Thanks for watching. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty.